Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, and this is In the Moment. Hello, hello, hello. All right. And I know it's a long intro, but Nick is going to be working on that. We're going to end up getting a better intro. But the purpose of this intro and all that is to show the process of how a bill becomes a law. So just kind of take note of that because eventually it will change. Um, I want to thank everybody for coming. We're going to try to spruce it up a little bit today. We're going to go into more discussion as we go along, kind of liven it up. If you are watching on Twitter Live, you can feel free to leave a comment on there. I do have it sitting in front of me and watching it. So if you throw a comment up on Twitter Live, or X Live, sorry, it's X now, X Live, I will try to read it up here on the screen if I get a chance. I want to welcome my two hosts of Who Wrote the Bill. Hello, hello, hello. How you doing, gentlemen? We have Nick Nunley and Jack Cunningham.
Hello, hello. It's great to be here.
All right. I got a good bill today. It took me a while to find that. Let me get your guys' info up going across the bottom so everybody will know where to find you. Nick has forward spaces on Twitter Spaces, X Spaces. So make sure that you guys will check out Nick. What's that, Nick?
There's one tonight.
Yes. And what time is that?
5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. on the East Coast.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. All right. Now, just so everybody knows, the bill I picked last week came from the 118th Congress. I'm not always going to pick bills from the 118th Congress, just so you know, because I want people to understand that depending upon what's going on in the world is going to determine how the bills are written and who's writing them and why they're writing them. And there's a lot that goes into that. You know, there's a lot of thought that goes into some of these bills, whether it's actually the legislators who write them or the corporations that write them for the legislators. The other aspect that I want to point out, a lot of these bills are supposed to be written so that anybody can understand them. And we have to remember that there's also a lot of legislators that they get elected to office, they have no prior political experience, and they're also deciphering these bills. So there's going to be a lot of ways to interpret some of these bills. And that's why we bring on here a bill and we ask you, who wrote the bill? Any questions, comments, or anything, gentlemen, before we get started?
No, last one was an exciting bill. It got kind of heated in the end, and I'm excited to see what kind of turns this one's going to take.
All right. Well, let's bring it up. This one has a summary, so we're going to start with the summary. And of course, I hide the name of the bill because I don't want people cheating and looking it up. This bill limits the drag down of petroleum in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, SPR, until the Department of Energy, DOE, submits to Congress a plan to increase the percentage of federal lands leased for oil and gas production. Specifically, the bill prohibits Department of Energy from drawing down petroleum in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve for non-emergency purposes until it submits a plan to increase the percentage of federal lands, including submerged lands of the outer continental shelf, that are leased for oil and gas production to offset any drag downs on or after January 21st, 2021. All right, gentlemen. Who wrote the bill, Democrat or Republican?
Republican.
Republican.
This screams Republican, especially January 21st, 2021. We all know what happened then. That is when Joe Biden, or the day after Joe Biden got sworn into office.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And no Democrat, at least a Democrat with their salt in this day and age, is going to support increasing the percentage of federal lands leased for oil and gas production.
Okay.
Yeah. And to specifically tie it to the Strategic Reserve, I mean, we can fill the strategic reserve from any source. It doesn't have to be straight from federal lands. I don't know why to tie the two together.
Okay. All right. Now, you guys are both pretty confident that this is a Republican bill.
This very well might be a situation where I was so confident that the previous one was Democrat, and then lo and behold, we go into the nitty gritty and it's totally different. But hey, I mean, for right now, I am very much guaranteed that this is a Republican sponsored bill.
Okay. Well, let me get out of the. There we go. All right. I'll bring her back up. We're going to go into the actual bill itself. And this is a short bill. So remember, I'm going to be keeping this bill short. All right. Section 2, Compensatory Production Increase Plan. Section 161 of the Energy Policy and Conservation Act under United States Code 42, Section 6241, is amended by adding at the end of the following new subsection. K, plan. In general, except in the case of a severe supply interruption described in subsection D, and that's when they're talking subsection D, they're talking of the United States Code. The Secretary may not execute the first drawdown of petroleum products in the reserve after the date of enactment of this subsection, whether through sale, exchange, or loan, until the Secretary has developed and submitted to Congress a plan to increase the percentage of federal lands, including submerged lands of the outer continental shelf, under the jurisdiction of the Secretary of Agriculture, the Secretary of Energy, the Secretary of the Interior, and the Secretary of Defense, leased for oil and gas production by the same percentage as the percentage of petroleum in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve that has been drawn down during the period beginning January 21st, 2021, and ending on the date of the enactment of this act, and that is to be drawn down in that first and subsequent drawdowns, subject to the limitation under paragraph 2. So, are you guys still Republican on this, or do you think it's a Democrat?
Still Republican.
Are they trying to equate the percentage of lands unlocked for drilling to the percentage of oil that we use? I'm confused by that.
Yes, to the percentage of oil we use.
That's not that's oranges and apples. Percentage of land open for drilling to percentage of oil used. And
that's how I read it also. Now, again, we could be wrong in how we read this, but that's how I read it. All right, I'm going to go on. Limitation A, in general. The plan required by paragraph 1 shall not provide for a total increase in the percentage of federal lands described in paragraph 1 leased for oil and gas production in excess of 15%, or the financial benefit or participation of any entity that has a contractual relationship with or is owned, controlled, or under the influence of a foreign entity of concern. B, in this paragraph, the term foreign entity of concern means the People's Republic of China, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the Russian Federation, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and any other country the government of which is subject to sanctions imposed by the United States. Who wrote the bill, gentlemen?
Exxon.
These are all things that, I think that there's more of a relationship now between the Democrats and the Republicans in regards to making sure that the United States or companies within the United States or headquarters within the United States control some of these companies. Now, granted, there are a lot of corporate conglomerates that are all based around the world, and some of them do business within China. But then again, I don't think that we, like any companies, have any business within the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or well, maybe Iran. But then again, we still have a lot of sanctions on these countries. So my perspective on that is that it's still Republican sponsored, but perhaps because of these protections or provisions, maybe there was a Democrat or two who co-sponsored it based on that. I still think that it's a Republican-led bill, especially because the fact that it being January 21st, 2021, that whole thing is about the presidency of Joe Biden. And
Okay.
because of that, it's
Right.
to me
Now,
that's telling.
I'm gonna add something to this just so that you think about this. This bill was introduced on January 9th of 2023.
It was January 2023.
Yes, the bill was introduced on January 9th of 2023.
Well, that's roughly around the start of the new Congress, right? Does the new Congress get sworn in on the 3rd?
Uh-huh.
Which during that time we had Speaker McCarthy. Well, we didn't have Speaker McCarthy at the time, but we had the narrow Republican-led majority in Congress come into being, and that makes sense to me.
Okay. I see that we lost Nick. He probably got a phone call. I will bring him back up to date when and if he comes back in. I know he does have a lot of things going on.
Sure.
So let's go back to this consultation. The secretary shall, in consultation with the Secretary of Agriculture, the Secretary of the Interior, and the Secretary of Defense, A, prepare the plan required by paragraph 1, and B, ensure such plan will not result in the sale of petroleum products drawn down from the reserve to Iran, China, North Korea, or Russia.
Well, I think that there's a whole geopolitical component to this too, especially considering how, because of the nature of the war in Ukraine and the sanctions imposed by Western countries, there's a whole lot of focus on making sure that we don't sell as many products as needed to Russia and China, and especially because of our stance with Iran and North Korea as well. To me, that also signifies that there might have been a Democrat or two who coordinated some of this into it. Now, granted, I don't think that there's a Democrat who would vote for this or whatnot. At least for me, I would hope not. If I was reading this bill so far, I would vote no. But in looking at this and looking at preventing the sale of petroleum products drawn down to these countries, I kind of think that that's a bit of a nothing burger too. Like, I'm not exactly sure what the exact clarifications are for companies to send it out as well. And especially because Speaker McCarthy, or again, not speaker at the time, but as being head of the Republican-controlled caucus, there's a whole focus on making sure that, fear-mongering about these countries, and in a way, it's rightfully so. But then again, at the same time, just...
Okay. So who do you think wrote the bill? You're still with the Republicans, correct?
Yep, still with Republicans.
All right. Submission to Congress. The Secretary shall submit the plan developed under paragraph 1 to the Committees on Armed Services, Agriculture, Energy and Commerce, and Natural Resources of the House of Representatives, and the Committees on Energy and Natural Resources, Environment and Public Works, Armed Services, and Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry of the state. Now, considering that this bill is about drilling oil, this is consistent.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, all of these make sense.
Yeah, so there's a consistency on who you're going to send it to. So it wouldn't matter if it was a Republican or a Democrat. Either or would send it to these entities, these committees.
Yeah.
Thompson Divide. Now the Thompson Divide and all that is in Colorado, and that's a drilling source.
Okay.
As part of the plan developed under paragraph 1, the secretary shall identify areas to lease within the proximity within the approximately 224,000 acres, including approximately 200,000 acres of National Forest System lands, approximately 15,000 acres of public lands, and approximately almost 9,000 acres of reserved federal mineral interest within the Thompson Divide area in Colorado.
This also to me screams Republican as well, because Democrats, thankfully now, are really prioritizing environmental safety and environmental protection. And in seeing this, over 200,000 acres is no small amount of land. And having
Correct.
the this land be now subject to lease for controlling and extraction of these resources, that to me screams Republican and private sector interests.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Okay. And requirements. The plan required by paragraph 1 shall include a list of parcels planned to be offered for lease, including for each parcel, the size of the parcel, the location of the parcel, and any permits and approvals necessary to access the parcel and produce oil and gas on the parcel.
This just makes it easier for these companies to identify and be like, oh, hey, I see this awesome piece of land. I'm going to go get this. It's convenient. They narrowed it down specifically for this utilization. Perfect.
Yep. All right. I'm just looking to see.
What are your takes on this so far? Like, before we continue, like, just based on this so far, like, are you, like, do you think that this is not a good policy so far, based on what we know?
Hold on, I'm texting Nick.
Okay.
Letting him know we lost you.
Well, I hope that he's able to come back on.
Yeah.
You see, like, this like portion right here is baffling, because we have a whole host of issues in this country that we have to deal with, and prioritizing these companies for extracting precious resources, I don't think that that's a great use of our time. But then again, nothing that the Republican majority in the House has been productive.
Right. Okay, let's go on to number 3. No effect on certain withdrawals of federal lands. Nothing in this act or any amendments made by this act shall affect the presidential memorandum titled Memorandum on the Withdrawal of Certain Areas. Here we go. We got Nick back. Hello, Nick. Welcome back.
Hey,
All right. I'm going to do a quick review for Nick, just to let Nick know. This bill was written on January 9th of 2023. So I'm giving you that added information. I'll do a quick reback. We already discussed the other countries. The Secretary shall, in consultation with Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Interior, and Secretary of Defense, prepare the plan required by paragraph 1. Ensure such plan will not result in the sale of petroleum products drawn down from the reserve to Iran, China, North Korea, or Russia. Submission to Congress. This is boilerplate to include these committees. And then the Thompson Divide, which is an area in Colorado for that has drilling sites. As part of the plan developed under paragraph 1, the Secretary shall identify areas to lease within the approximately 224,000 acres, 20,000 acres, National Forest Systems, so on. We were just getting into the finished up with the requirements, which includes the size, the location, and any permits necessary. Jack agreed that it still sounded Republican. How about you?
Still sounds like they want to drill for oil. That's all I hear.
Okay. All right. I lost my size on my. There we go. Okay. Okay. No effect on certain withdrawals of federal lands. This goes into memorandum of the withdrawal of certain areas of the United States Outer Continental Shelf and leasing disposition and dated September 8th, 2020. No effect on existing leasing restrictions. Nothing in this act or the amendments made by this act shall affect any statutory or regulatory restrictions in effect on the date of the enactment of this act, including any withdrawal of federal land that may prohibit oil and gas leasing within the area designated as the North Atlantic Planning Area. Number 5, no effective existing leasing restrictions, which again, this goes through, nothing in this act. South Atlantic Planning Area. Rule of construction with respect to abuse of emergency declarations. Nothing in this act or the amendments made by this act may be construed to authorize the president to make a determination under Section 161D of the Energy Policy and Conservation Act under the United States Code 42 that an emergency situation exists in order for the Secretary of Energy to draw down and sell petroleum products under such subsection for political non-emergency purposes. This passed the House of Representatives January 27th, 2023.
Of course it did.
Okay, so
it's just going to die in the Senate.
Yes, the Senate refuses to look at it. So, see you later, Joe. Drive safe. So, okay. Both of you agree that this is a Republican bill then?
Absolutely.
Okay, we have Faithful Friend, Republican. Okay.
Good job, Faithful Friend. I'm glad that you're with us on this.
Now, I thought I would catch you guys up a little bit and make you reconsider when I mentioned the countries that we were going to refuse oil to, because you know that the Democrats, with the sanctions that Biden implemented, do not want to sell oil to those countries.
Right.
So that might have made you think it was a Democratic bill, but you don't seem to be fooled by that, do you?
Well, and especially because I know that since President Biden has worked to expand our NATO security and kept our, I guess, traditionally Western countries and democratic-leaning countries away from these authoritarian countries and sanctioning them for supporting this illegal war, I think that might have done that. But in looking at the exact language of this and seeing the basis of January 21st, 2023, and the amount of resources and size of the land and scope of each parcel of land, that to me just screams Republican, as well as private companies who are just wanting to profit off of our federally protected lands.
Yes. Okay, Nick, your thoughts on this? You're on mute, Nick. You're on mute. You're still on mute, Nick.
There we go.
I know that the Democrats, as much as they are liars and deceivers, they've been campaigning on protecting federal lands. And I think it would be just a bridge too far to really put federal lands on the hook like this. I couldn't imagine Democrats campaigning one way and then writing a bill so far the other way.
Okay.
Well, Nick, I gotta say, I thank you for the last portion of your comment, but hey, it's a pretty bold statement to say that the Democrats are liars, man.
They all politicians are liars.
Exactly. And just know that when Nick is saying Democrats, he's talking big D Democrats. In other words, House, Senate, versus little d, which is us, the voters. Me, I'm little I, so that I look at both sides of it. So
well,
I don't like either
Nick's
side.
Lower F, being a member of the Forward Party.
Yes. Okay. I was hoping to catch you guys because I know that there are bills out there that are going to present as one side, and you're going to find out that they're on the other side. But you were not wrong with this one. This one was proposed by Representative Kathy Rogers McMorris, Republican, Washington District 5.
Interesting.
Now, before I go into this anymore, I want to know if you think this is a good bill or a bad bill.
Bad.
And why do you think it's a bad bill?
We need to stop prioritizing our investments in dependence on fossil fuels. We are never, ever going to be energy independent if we continue focusing on that. Fossil fuels are a finite resource, and we should have continued investments into renewable energies after the Carter administration, because then it would have been substantially more economically beneficial today for people, private consumers, and individual people to have these protections. And yet, because of the lack of investments, we are seeing radical climate change, seeing a whole host of different consequences because of our continued pollutants resulting from fossil fuels. And I also don't think that we should be rewarding companies to go and take over our federally protected lands for profit. Granted, I know that we're in a capitalist society and we do require our business cash flow to benefit not just themselves, but the workers. At the same time, we can't continue to profit off of this. At this point in time, we have to make sure that we continue our investments into renewable energy to make sure that we have a climate and a relatively healthy earth compared to continued investments in fossil fuels.
Okay. Nick, let me hear your view on this.
Yeah, I think that it's just a shame that we're putting federal lands on the hook for this. I mean, we should, I agree with Jack, we should have been for a long time now well aware that we cannot depend on fossil fuels. That has negative externalities as far as pollution goes. It has great impact on the land, and we want to conserve our federal lands as much as possible. We should be turning to alternative energy sources. Texas is doing a great job with renewables like wind and solar. I know that Southern California gets a lot of sun. We might as well put that to use. I'm a huge fan of nuclear energy. I think that there could be a lot done in the way of nuclear energy, and we've all but thumbed our nose at it. Instead of turning to technology like that, we are digging up federal lands and fracking them. I think that just goes against the conservative nature of the park systems, and we can get our oil elsewhere. We shouldn't be tapping the American resource as quickly as possible. We should be conserving it.
Correct. I agree with that. Okay, now I'm going to go into this a little bit more because there's more underlying aspects to this. Okay, so
there's always provisions in there that are
right,
very subversive.
Definitely. Now, this bill is titled the Strategic Production Response Act. It's HR 21. Obviously, I told you January 30th, 2023 was the latest action. It was submitted on introduced January 9th of 2023. When you go down here to actions, that's going to tell you where it's been and what it's done. There's 3 titles to it. You go down to the titles. Let's see. Strategic Production Response Act. Strategic Production Response Act. Initially, it was HR 21. That's all there was with it. Official title introduced. It goes through that. There are 78. Okay, come on.
Wow. 78 amendments.
78 amendments to it. When you start going into the amendments and you start looking at a lot of the things that they want to add to it, how they want to, again, An amendment number 77 printed in the congressional record to permit the secretary to delay the down draw if it will worsen inflation. They forgot the word it. Latest action on agreeing with the nickel amendment failed by a record vote, 207 to 222. There are a lot of things that they want to do to this, how they want to, amendment 74, an amendment numbered 88 printed in the congressional record to add a new paragraph, accepting the plan from applying if the president produces a plan to limit the amount of oil and gas exported from the United States by the same percentage as the percentage of petroleum in the strategic petroleum reserve that is drawn down in each drawdown that occurs after the date of the enactment of the subsection. When you start going through all of these amendments, and there are a shit ton of amendments, okay? So they have a lot of in January when this was initially submitted, because when you start looking at the dates of the amendments, they spent a lot of time discussing this. The first amendment that was added to it, what's the date on it? I'm not seeing a date. 126. So here we are on 126, and let's go back up here. 127. So over a period of 2 to 3 days, they spent a lot of time in Congress talking about what they wanted to do with this bill. Now, there are 40 co-sponsors, and they are all Republican.
Good deal.
Okay? There are no Democrats on this bill whatsoever. And I think that goes back to what both of you were talking about, the whole federal lands aspect. Democrats are just not going to allow drilling on federal lands. They're just not going to allow it.
Part of me was worried that there might have been one or two, but I'm very, very glad to see that it is all Republican on this.
Yeah, I'm not glad the Republicans are sponsoring something so callous and short-sighted.
Yep.
I'm glad the Democrats aren't such liars. I really lost a lot of faith on that one.
Okay. It has been to the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and it has been to the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. There's a little committee activity and all that. I don't recall if there was any votes on it or not. But I'm going to go back to the text, because when we go to the text of this, we have United States Code. And when you go to the United States Code, this is originally from Title 42, the Public Health and Welfare, Chapter 77, Energy and Conservation. Hold on, let me increase the size of this. Let me make it easier to read. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Drawdown and sale of petroleum products. It's from Title 42, the Public Health and Welfare, Chapter 77, Energy Conservation, Subchapter 1, Domestic Supply Availability, Part B, Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And that's where we get down to the 6241, the subsection, drawdown and sale of petroleum products. And they were talking about D, presidential finding prerequisite to draw down and sale. Drawdown and sale of petroleum products from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve may not be made unless the president has found drawdown and sale are required by a severe energy supply interruption or by obligations of the United States under the International Energy Program. Now, remember, in this bill that they wrote, they said that they would not interfere with subsection D. Okay? That they will not interfere with that. So, if we were to run low, an emergency situation exists and there is a significant reduction in supply, which is of significant scope and duration. A severe increase in the price of petroleum products has resulted from such emergency situation, and such price increase is likely to cause a major adverse impact on the national economy. Now, I want to bring this in because Remember how everybody, when gas prices were low, they were saying, Trump, yay, gas prices went up, Biden, boo, why can't, the president has no effect on the gas prices.
Yep.
This is the only way that the president can have an effect on that is if we are in a national emergency and we are basically running out of oil and the prices are skyrocketing, then and only then can the president enact a drawdown to try to help the prices.
If I remember correctly, during the later stages of the worst of COVID, when Joe Biden first got elected and these prices were going sky high, he did release some of our petroleum reserve to lower the gas prices, and then we were able to buy back some to increase their supply for a substantially cheaper cost. So granted, I don't like, furthering fossil fuels and whatnot, but in that moment, especially because this is what our country depends upon mostly, especially for transportation, that was a relatively good policy because it was able to help people themselves have lower costs at the pump.
Right. Now, go ahead, Nick.
No, it's true that we still are dependent on fossil fuels, and it often hurts most commuters and hardworking people. The price of the pump, and you got to get around. The price of fuel is inelastic, and so people will pay that price of the pump no matter how high, and it can really wreak disaster.
Right. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate, okay? I'm going to be the bad guy here, all right? I want to throw in some alternative thought, all right? Now, we know that drilling on federal lands is not a good thing. But let's look at it from this aspect. If we were to open up federal lands and allow this drilling, that would create jobs. Is job creation a good thing?
Well, I mean, on the surface, job creation is a good thing, especially because we, as a capitalist society, want to provide better opportunities for people to not just advance themselves, but also contribute to that economy and flow of goods and services. At the same time, if it's for causes that are in this manner contributing substantial harm to the population as a whole, when we could be investing in providing job opportunities in renewables that in this case would provide net benefit opportunities, having increased jobs for these fossil fuel industries is not good. And especially seeing now with President Biden coming out with the Civilian Climate Corps and a whole host of other things as well, we are seeing increased job opportunities for renewable energy, especially as education and providing for people who do want to get involved to have this opportunity to get the education as well to get that. Because I know that there are some people who have done fossil fuel work their entire lives, and that's all that they know. And coming from Ohio, we have a large portion in southeastern Ohio and eastern Ohio who live in Appalachia. And as such, they have had a lot of investments in the coal industry and whatnot. And when those jobs went away, their quality of living hurt. And we cannot deny that if you do remove a job sector, that will substantially harm the people in the short term. And while I'm glad that we're looking at the long term, it's how you deal with the short term hurt that some people are feeling. And for some people, if they lose their job as their only source of income, that will be a descent into poverty because they still have to pay for rent, they still have to pay for mortgages, food, energy, etc. So, but going back to your thing, on the surface, job creation is good. But I guess to the collective and the individual, if that job is immoral to you or having a net consequence, for me, I don't think that's a good thing.
Okay. How about you, Nick? Your thoughts?
It has to do with the negative externalities and the compounding effects, compounding economic effects that, when you're making decisions like this. So, you can create jobs in the military-industrial complex. You can fund the creation of shells, and that will create a certain amount of jobs. But among the sectors you can invest in, that actually creates the least amount of jobs, because the majority of that money is going towards disposable infrastructure. It's literally going to bombs which are to be disposed of. The millions of dollars that it takes to create a shell or create a missile goes to bits when it gets exploded, and it doesn't have a recursive effect. So unlike investing in military infrastructure, when you invest in, say, a school, it can create many times the amount of jobs, because it has these recursive effects and the money flows throughout the economy time and time again, increasing the velocity of money and increasing the job opportunities within that community. So job creation is of course important, but it is much more important to work smart and to think about how you can get bang for your buck where you invest. And that has to do with investments domestically in infrastructure and stuff like local services. It doesn't go far when you invest it in a fuel or a product that gets burned into CO2.
Okay. So job creation as an argument is not a good argument, because we got renewables and we have other things that we can utilize that money for to create other jobs that would still be job creation. So job creation isn't a good argument for this. So it comes down to then preventing sales to foreign lands that would put sanctions on. So do you think this is a good idea to do that, to have that backup in case we run short on fuel, to add drilling to the federal lands because we put sanctions on Russia and another country? Is this still a good idea, or are there other alternatives?
If we were using it as more of a tool, I don't know exactly how much of a tool we're using it as, but I always make this argument. I would much rather offer oil and natural gas to all of Europe than bombs and guns. So in that specific case, sure. But I haven't heard a big effort. I haven't heard that that's the use for it.
For me, I see we should prioritize our economy first and our population first. I think that American citizens and American companies should be the sole people in control of the land of their companies and the things that are produced here in this country. And when we do export, we should be exporting to people who not just align with us, but also share our values, who want to be democratic countries, who preserve individual freedoms. And I think that it's great that we restrict and sometimes outright prohibit any and all trade activities with countries who are hostile to us or our allies or our strategic interests. And I think it's great that there is a clause in that says to prevent the exporting of these resources to these hostile countries. And I think that itself can be a powerful argument, but when it's combined with all these other issues, I don't think it's great.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. And just one more thing about the job creation. That one of the best jobs now is working on wind turbines. I would take that job up myself, but I'm scared of heights. So that's off the table for me. But it is a great job. It's a blue collar job. It's a job that you work with tools, and it can be easily transferable for someone who's used to working in fossil fuels with some training. And I would like to see the government encourage more of that kind of training. And maybe, if we get off of fossil fuels enough ourselves, maybe we'll have enough extra to export to our allies.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've just knocked out the two biggest arguments you could have for backing this bill. The only argument that's left, okay, shouldn't corporations be allowed to drill on federal land and make more money if they so choose?
No, absolutely not.
No, that's our federal land. That's the common land. We said no.
Because that's the only argument left, because Do you see this bill supporting anybody else other than corporations making money off of it?
Nope.
No, I was joking when I thought Exxon wrote it, but I don't get who else could have. Who else has the incentives to write like this?
Right. And make note how they use the code, United States code. And let's see here. I want to, because down at the bottom, let's see, United States Code 42, 6241. Is that who they? Yeah, they use the same one down here. So it's the only code that's written into this bill. I'm trying to see if there was anything else that I may have been missed.
And
No.
what's kind of scary about this bill is how much corporate money and influence has gotten into one of our major political parties. And unfortunately, because of Citizens United, we could have as much money going to people in our government as possible through super PACs and things of that nature as well. And because of that, and because we're outsourcing our bill creation to major lawyers and lobbyists from major companies, we see legislation proposed like this. I personally do not think that we should be investing in major corporations and conglomerates. I would rather see that investment go into small businesses. And I am pro-union and I'm pro corporation busting. And I hope that eventually some of these major corporations can be broken up to diminish the influence that they have on not just our government, but also on the day-to-day lives of people. Because I think you mentioned it too, Nick, that the price for oil or gasoline is substantially variable, but it's a thing that we need as a society to function. And that to me is really scary, that it's not a public utility in a public aspect. So essentially all these corporations and the CEOs and people in the C-suite can make millions of dollars at the expense of not just their workers, but also the population itself, pollution, and our overall environmental health.
Yeah, I would like to see oil resource nationalized. I would have no problem with Exxon becoming a state, a ward of the state, and the resource public utility. Yeah, and like Alaska, we could all receive a UBI off of the oil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, Jack, you use certain words here, seeing so much money going in, corporate money going into one party. I guarantee you that's going to come back to bite you in the ass.
Well, if you allow me to clarify, for this particular thing, for corporate money going to the Republicans from these industries, yes, I do not deny that there's a whole host of corporate money going to the Democratic Party. So just to be clear about that, because they do funnel money into both political parties for their interests.
Yes.
And for me, this is something that I wish strongly, and I'm doing my best to advocate for, that the Democratic Party moves away from that and strictly goes to grassroots. At the same time, I know that unfortunately money is power in this society, and if one of the major parties doesn't contribute to that or receive that, then all this money and attention goes to one party, and they could buy media advertising, they can buy into small businesses and local interests and different community things to say, oh, this is great, this is wonderful. And if there's not a means to counter that, then that is that's dangerous. And I could see the opposite happening if it was the Republican Party, just grassroots, and Democrats, especially if there was an issue that I myself didn't fully agree with or other people didn't fully agree with. So my whole perspective on this issue is that there should be no corporate money involved in any politics. I hope Citizens United does get overturned someday, and I do hope that there is a federally mandated limit for how much any and all money can go to candidates. And this includes from all sectors, because there's, for example, for a city council candidate, you can only contribute $1,100 as an individual. I would hope that something like that could extend to companies on a national level to prevent that from happening, as well as essentially getting rid of super PACs.
I like Andrew Yang's democracy dollars or whatever it is he called them, but I want to see that come into play. Now, final thought on this and all that. Remember, red, yellow, green flag. So on this bill, strategic production response by Kathy Rogers of Washington District 5. I don't know if she's running for re-election or not, but if she's your representative, you might want to look at what she's promoting here. And I would suggest going to this bill, check it out, see who the co-sponsors are. And if somebody in your state is your representative and is supporting this bill, and you agree with us on whether it's red, yellow, or green, that's what you need to do is look at your representative, give them a call, and either say, hey, I love this bill, or dude, no. Okay. So reach out to your representatives. So Nick, red, yellow, or green on this bill?
Huge glaring red flag. I think that even the logic of the bill is, I don't want to use too harsh of words here, but it's pretty absent-minded. I mean, again, comparing apples to oranges, the percentage of the strategic reserve that's used to the percentage of land that gets drilled, it's again, not two things to compare. I like some of the amendments that were made to exempt this, and I think it's exempt some of the requirements on this. I don't know why you would ever propose something like this, and I think it's just horribly political, the fact that they're trying to do this at the federal level. I mean, if they really need to drill more, they could figure out how to do that through the state resources. They don't have to open up federal lands in such a short-sighted move like this. So yeah, huge red flag. And is this a Republican in Washington state?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well,
yes. Nick, Jack.
I don't think I could have said it better myself. I'm absolutely in agreement with Nick. Huge, glaring red flag. And Nick, to your point about going through the states themselves, Ohio's supermajority Republican government is allowing fracking on state parks. And they're allowing that to happen. In fact, we're having meetings on that right now. And even though we Democrats are trying to fight and prevent that, because they have a supermajority and they also have a majority in our Ohio Supreme Court, which, as a side note, our governor and one of the state Supreme Court members are the same family. So that's pretty crazy. In seeing that, they are going to allow fracking on our state parks, which is going to be a disaster for our health. And so, to your point, yep, they are exploring that too. So,
oh my gosh. And they're doing it at the same time. One or the other, they got to have it both.
All right. Now, I thought I was going to be able to trick you guys with the whole Russia aspect in China and all that, but it didn't work. And no, I'm not picking on Republicans because this happened to be another Republican bill. I go through and I look at the bills and I try to figure out a bill that may not be obvious. Okay. And I thought I might have been able to mess you up a little bit. I was wrong on that one. I'll try to get a more in-depth crazy bill that is going to be like, oh my God, who in the hell wrote this? So, and there are quite a few out there. It's not that difficult. I had a couple that were really long. I had one that was just like, it was like 80 freaking pages, and we're not going to sit there and go through an 80-page bill.
Thanks for that.
There's no way there's no way to even summarize something that huge, but
I thought this one went really well. It was concise, it got straight to the point, and it was horrible. Really,
Yes.
I love that we're all in agreement on this. Granted, we probably won't be on things in the future, but for this one, I love that the three of us are in agreement. That's great.
Well, again, when we get these bills out, I want to make sure that we have time to actually break them down and try to, again, play devil's advocate, try to justify it somehow. What could be the reason that you would do this outside of corporations making more money? Because our government is not supposed to be working for the corporations. It's supposed to be working for us.
Absolutely.
And I have a bad feeling that we're going to find that down the road, a majority of these bills are going to be corporate bills on the left and the right. And I just want people to be prepared for that, because the objective behind like third parties like Forward is to get rid of the corporate influences, and I know that a lot of the Democrats want that also, the progressive Democrats as I see them. But there's still a lot of corporate Democrats out there that, as long as it's not going to really have an influx on some of the things that they're proposing in their district, they're going to get behind these corporate bills. And quite frankly, I was actually surprised to see that it wasn't bipartisan, because I was expecting more corporate Democrats to get on there, and there wasn't. Not one Democrat. So I was surprised by that aspect, that there wasn't a Democrat on there. But these are the things that we do. Faithful friend, so what are your thoughts? Is this a good bill or a bad bill? I'm going to see if Faithful Friend will give us a response there from our comment section. But I think this was a really, really good segment. I enjoyed breaking this one down. Can't find a good reason to have this bill passed. It already passed the House. It hasn't been brought up on the floor in the Senate.
Chuck Schumer is never going to allow that on the floor.
Right. Schumer will never allow this on the floor. And even if he did, he would only do it if he could whip together enough Republicans to also vote no on it. And that's the thing about the leaders of the House and the Senate. They're going to look at bills, and if they can't whip enough people together to get what they want, and this is where I have an issue with the leaders of each house having that much power on what comes to the floor and what doesn't. I think there needs to be a way that if the legislators decide that this is a bill that needs to be proposed for a vote, there's got to be a way to get it up there. And there might be a way, and I haven't found it. I've tried to Google it and look for it. If there is a way, somebody please let me know, because I think that the people need more power, because if the people knew more about the bills that are coming up, they could turn around and be calling their legislators and say, hey, we want this one to get on the floor. This one needs to be on the floor because this one's for the people. And they would be motivated to get out there and start working for us like they're supposed to.
Absolutely.
All right. Any final thoughts? Any final closing words, people?
Faithful Friend responded.
Oh, not so good. Thank you, Faithful Friend.
All right. I just want to thank you guys for this show. This was a great segment, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So
I agree. Thank you both so much for this. I love this. I'm looking forward to next week's, and this is going to be great. Thank you all so much, and thank you for joining us, those in the audience.
Yes. And remember, and all that, if you want to be a guest on this show, get a hold of either myself, Jack, or Nick. I will definitely gladly love for anybody else that wants to come up here and debate a bill and break it down and look at it, to come on here. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care if you're non-affiliated. I don't care. The point is to have a diverse panel that's going to look at these things and give their honest opinions. And the reason why I don't tell you who wrote the bill at the beginning is because I want you to look at this bill, whatever it is I propose, with an open, clear view, because if you don't know who wrote it, then you're going to actually read it. Whereas if you know who wrote it, you might go in with a biased perception, and I want to try to eliminate that biased perception. So that's the whole point of this. All right, everyone. Thank you again. And remember, be kind, be happy, and may good things come your way. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.